Coming up on Tech News Today, Mozilla puts out some phones, AT&T sucks up some more spectrum, and Steve Ballmer consolidates his power. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, January 22nd, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT1. And they recently launched a developer platform for complete code control. And by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone, and enter TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Aya Zakhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting each time with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feed. Mozilla has announced 2 developer handsets meant to test the Firefox OS mobile operating system. Geeks Phone and Telefonica have partnered to produce the phones called the Kion and the Peak. The Kion should be available in February and has pretty limited specs. The Peak, on the other hand, has better specs, more normal specs, but no availability was announced, and prices have not been set for either of the devices.
AT&T has signed an agreement with Atlantic Telenetwork, or AT&I, to acquire its U.S. retail wireless operations for $780 million in cash. In the deal, AT&T will acquire wireless properties, licenses, network assets, retail stores, which operate under the Alltel brand in the U.S., and will receive 585,000 new subscribers.
Verizon just posted its fourth quarter numbers. The company suffered a loss of $4.22 billion. Last year, Verizon lost $2 billion. This latest loss is attributed to costs due to Superstorm Sandy and a change in valuation of its pension liabilities.
On the heels of LG's announcement that the Optimum G will come to 50 more markets worldwide, we got news that the Optimus G Pro will come to Japan's NTT Docomo in late April. The G Pro is a 5-inch 1080p beast with a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, 1.7 gigahertz Snapdragon processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and a 13 megapixel camera.
Dish Network is closing down roughly 300 Blockbuster stores in the coming weeks and laying off 3,000 employees in the process. Company says that the closures cover underperforming stores or stores that are nearing the end of their leases. It'll still leave 500 Blockbuster stores in the U.S. Douglas County-based Dish acquired the video rental chain out of bankruptcy for $320 million in 2011. Douglas County, Colorado.
Amazon just expanded its in-app purchasing system for games. First available on Android and the Kindle Fire, Amazon's in-app purchasing system will be available on the PC, Mac, and the web. Amazon takes a 30% cut, but its hook is in-app purchases can show up on Amazon's recommendation services and bestseller lists.
So that they know more about you. That's awesome. Apple nudged out Android in the United States in Q4 2012, according to Cantor World Panel Comtech numbers. They do a survey of consumers. The iPhone made up 51.2% of U.S. sales, while Android accounted for 44.8%. Windows Phone snagged third place with 2.8%. The iPhone also grabbed 2/3 of Japan. Android was #1 worldwide in sales, however, though its growth is finally stabilizing. And Windows Phone showed improvement in Europe, up to 5.8% of sales there and 13.9% of sales in Italy alone.
AMD has hired 2 senior engineers who have experience at both Qualcomm and Apple. Charles Matar has expertise in low power and embedded chip design. He comes from Qualcomm as AMD's new VP of SoC development, while Wayne Moretsky came from Apple, was named VP of software IP development. AMD still gets about 80% of its revenue from the PC market, but that's a market that is slowing down. So safe to say these hires will be involved in the next gen of AMD.
Reports have been buzzing around about the idea of Dell taking itself private, taking itself off the stock market. And now CNBC reports Microsoft might be there to help them out. Microsoft reportedly having conversations with both Michael Dell, obviously the founder and owner of Dell, and investment firm Silver Lake about putting somewhere from $1 to $3 billion into the company. CNBC says the participants hope to reach a deal by the end of this week.
Scientists at the National Institute of Informatics in Tokyo have developed a pair of prototype glasses that can fuse facial recognition software. Now, the glasses work by emitting infrared light, which does not allow facial recognition software to work properly. The light doesn't affect the wearer's vision, but it adds noise to photos.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Squarespace, the fast and reliable way to make yourself a website, any kind of blog, online portfolio. I have a bunch of different websites. I have them on a bunch of different hosting sites. And let me tell you the one that bothers me the least, Squarespace. I don't get any bug. Oh, you're running out of memory. No, it's up. It works. And when I need to make a tweak, it's fast and it's easy. I run Sword and Laser on there. I run my Merit Books website on there. And the best part about it is once you've created that design, well, you could pick one of their designs and you just kind of tweak it to your taste, and you put in your content. Squarespace takes the hard part out. They actually have mobile responsive designs so that your site looks right no matter what screen people are looking at. Who knows what screens people are using today? We're talking about these 5-inch phones, 8-inch tablets. Everything's all crazy out there. Squarespace has got you covered. They resize your images into 7 different sizes when you upload it. They've got that responsive design template that makes sure the right layout shows up on the device people are looking at. And it's fast and easy to use, 100% drag and drop functionality for all customization tools. Squarespace is exceptionally well designed. They have an award-winning design team and user experience experts working on your design. You get the benefit of award-winning designers without having to be one. And they integrate all your website needs: domains, design, development, hosting, customer support. Unified service makes it fast and easy to create a high-quality website or blog. You don't have to give them a cent to try it out. Sign up for a free account. No credit card needed. Just try it out. Start building your website. If you do decide to purchase it, use the offer code TNT1 and get 10% off your first purchase on new accounts. That's squarespace.com. Use that offer code TNT1. Everything you need to create an exceptional website. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. So yeah, give them a little post on Twitter and thank them for their support as well. All right, let's bring in Brian Dunning, science writer and host of the Skeptoid podcast, skeptoid.com. Welcome to the show, Brian. You come highly recommended by my good buddy, Brian Brushwood.
Well, he's a magician. His job is to fool people. So joke's on you.
Yeah, he did it again. No, actually, I love what you do, and really happy you could join us today. Let's start off talking about the Firefox OS developer preview phones. Firefox OS is the outgrowth of Boot2Gecko, which is Firefox's operating system, and they're targeting it on the phone, all built in HTML5, JavaScript, CSS. The idea is to make an open platform. You can develop for it. You control your apps. They can go into the Firefox marketplace that'll be on the phone, or you can sell them directly on your website, whatever you want, however you want to distribute them. And these two phones, these developer phones out today, partnership of Geeks Phone, which is selling the devices, Telefonica, which is the carrier that will provide connectivity for the devices. These will be 3G phones, not LTE phones. And they're minimal specs. I mean, the Kion is the one they're going to be selling in February. That's a gigahertz S1 Snapdragon, 4 gigabytes of ROM storage on here, 512 megabytes of RAM, 3.5-inch display. It's an HVGA display. This is the bare minimum specs for you to run an app on here and make sure it works on an actual device. Then there's the Peak that's coming out a little later. That's more normal specs, 1.2 gigahertz, 4.3-inch QHD IPS screen, 8-megapixel camera. TCL and ZTE are on board to make devices which are expected to come later this year and probably start in Brazil on Vivo, which is Telefonica's Brazilian brand of mobile carrier. KDDI in Japan says they'd like to sell these phones as well. They had an announcement to that effect. Everybody wants to be that new OS. We heard about how Windows Phone is doing great by garnering like 3 to 5% of the marketplace. We are always talking about the trials and travails of BlackBerry. I asked, what hope does Firefox OS have here? I mean, these are nice developer phones. It means they're treating developers right and getting apps. That seems to be the key. What's their chances?
You know, I think because of the speeds might be a slowdown for this actual device, because the appification of all the websites that have happened with iPhones and Android devices, that could be going away if you could have the Firefox OS. I mean, flat out, you can do all this stuff in HTML anyway, so why not just basically skin your websites? I can see wireless carriers getting behind Firefox OS just so they don't have to be beholden to Apple or Samsung or anybody else. But I don't think it's got a great chance out there because there's so many different operating systems out there. And if this doesn't have if Microsoft can't get a foothold, I don't know if Mozilla is going to.
I mean, do you think enough developers might be saying, well, Android was supposed to be the open answer to the operating system for everybody, and well, depending on who you ask, in a lot of cases it's not as open as it should be. Would that be a draw to developers? Because otherwise, I feel like it's like we've got such established OSs here. It seems like a really tough market.
I think it's trying to solve the wrong problem. Who cares what developers think? Who cares? It's what matters is what consumers think. And really, very few consumers are out there rending their garments and tearing their hair because there aren't enough new smartphone platforms out there, new operating systems to run your phone on. I just don't see them gaining much traction with that.
The way you back this out is that what the consumers care about is apps, right? And so to get good apps, you have to make the developers happy. I guess that's the logic behind appealing to developers here. But you make a really good point, Brian. Are consumers that unhappy with the way that the current app store systems works? There's a lot of criticisms to be made, and Apple gets under fire all the time for curating their store too carefully and locking down what happens there. But I don't see the large outcry from people saying, "Oh, well, I wish my smartphone were more open." Sadly, because I do. I wish my smartphone was more open. So as a geek, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, well, it's similar to how Bing came out, where people really crying out over, "Gee, we need a way to search the internet better." It's like Google was perfectly good for everyone. Very few people that I know rejoiced that Bing is now out there as an alternative. I see the same thing with all of these new little phone operating systems coming and going. It's not the developers are just. I don't believe the developers are important to the market nearly as much as the consumers are. Obviously, like you said, developers need to be happy with the platform in order to come out with new apps for it. But developers are going to develop for the platform the consumers are on, whether they're happy about it or not. I don't think we have to worry about that.
I do think that it's smart for Mozilla to be striking these partnerships in Spain, in Brazil. Those are vibrant markets that have a lot more openings, a lot more places where you could come out with a cheaper smartphone or make some headway that you might not make in a more locked up market like the United States and Europe, where, as we heard in the news feeds, it's pretty dominant. Android and iOS have almost secured that entire sales market. So there's some room here, and that's what Nokia and RIM are thinking of doing too. RIM is always touting the fact that its feature phones sell very well worldwide. Nokia is going after developing markets as well. So if they're certainly aimed in the right place, I'm cheering for them. I hope they figure out that other key that will help turn on consumer interest.
Low-cost phones might be that key. I think someone in chat was like, consumers care about this stuff, just, as cheap as possible.
Yeah, but Android already has low-cost phones, and they exist right now.
Well, I understand that. So but if something looks attractive and then it at least is at a similar price point, then they certainly have something that Apple can never be competing on, for example.
Now, on the carrier side of things, it's getting spectrum that's important. Being able to have enough spectrum to provide more and more services and roll out more capacity. AT&T made a move that way, right?
Yeah, AT&T of the large carriers in the U.S., AT&T is always sort of kicked for being have so much less coverage than Verizon. Verizon's done really well, and AT&T's earnings report is in just a couple of days, 2 days from now. So this is kind of good timing news, I think, for shareholders that the company is, as I mentioned in the news views, buying the U.S. wireless division of Atlantic Telenetwork, AT&I. Some folks might recognize the Alltel retail stores, network assets, licenses, wireless properties. That's all part of this deal. $780 million in cash. AT&T will also pick up a little over 500,000 subscribers. But, as you mentioned, Tom, they get spectrum in the 700 megahertz, 850, and 1900 megahertz bands, which according to AT&T, should integrate with the expanding existing network very nicely. And AT&I covers a very interesting part of the U.S., 4.6 million reach, and they're mostly in rural areas of states like Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, North Carolina, Ohio, and South Carolina. And AT&I has a CDMA network for existing subscribers in its markets, which is not compatible because AT&T uses GSM. But the company says, don't worry, we can basically switch over the existing CDMA network, and this is not going to affect our bottom line very much. It's not going to be too crazy of operating costs. To me, at least on paper, it's like, well, AT&T is gaining market share in an area that is rural, probably didn't have good coverage in, and looks like I mean, unless you think $780 million is too much, looks pretty smart to me.
I mean, I keep seeing these. I mean, AT&T went after T-Mobile a while ago, right? Now they've picked up Alltel. Sometimes I'm looking at these deals and I'm just curious at some point, when is AT&T going to put money into infrastructure of their own instead of buying other things? That's why I was talking about wireless plans with somebody the other day, and Verizon charges a ton of money, but they keep building out their infrastructure. How many press releases do we keep seeing about LTE being rolled out in like the smallest areas from Verizon? But AT&T, while they're growing, I mean, this is one way to do it, but I would love for them to be doing it on their own instead of just picking off little companies.
But I mean, is it really better to organically be rolling out your own network rather than buying up, a talented company that already has infrastructure that, you know what I mean?
Like this infrastructure is not compatible with theirs. This is CDMA and they're GSM, so it's kind of a strange idea. I mean, they're going to get spectrum, but that's where I'm kind of like hitting my head against the wall for this. It's like, come on, why are you buying this other than for the spectrum?
Sure.
But the network itself is not compatible with your phones. So you just created this.
But the company says this is not really going to be, this is going to be pretty cost effective for us. So you figure it's the easy way, right? They're throwing money at a problem instead of actually building anything. But I don't know for consumers if that's necessarily that bad of an idea. It's just the easy way out.
It is more consolidation. That's the only negative I see here is that we have another small competitor that's out of the race. I'm not sure that AT&I was really one of the top competitors that was going to make a difference in the competitive marketplace anyway. So I'm not, all broken up about it. But yeah, it's, what we need in the mobile space is more competition. This doesn't get us that, but I'm not sure it would have anyway. Let's talk about the next Galaxy S4, Ayaz. What does that sounded like?
Okay, we got a bunch of rumors, and I'm really glad we have Brian on because I want to see what he thinks of these rumors. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bunch of them, and I just want to know which ones you think are true. The Galaxy,
all rumors are true.
The Galaxy S4 would have an unbreakable screen. This is from a report from CNET. It would have the foldable display that was unveiled at CES. Potentially, that screen will be 1080p, a 5-inch 1080p display. 8-core processor. Apparently, that's showing up in benchmarks for the S4. 13-megapixel camera, potentially. And it might not even be called the Galaxy S4 because apparently that number is unlucky. It sounds like death in Chinese and in Japanese and sounds like kill in Korean. Ew. Brian, does any of this sound like this is what we'll see in April, the rumored date?
I would say absolutely. There's nothing there that rocks my world that seems improbable. If it's not going to happen with this phone, it's going to happen with some other phone within the next, certainly within the next year. People still love megapixel counts, even though, as we know, it has very little impact on the quality of your photographs. As far as the number 4 being unlucky, that's kind of more in my purview here. I don't know. I know that is a very big deal in Asia, but as far as it's the number 4, that's the unlucky sounding one. My memory foo is failing me here a little bit.
Tom, what do you think? I mean, we've seen the Galaxy S2 Plus be announced a while ago. Will this be the S3 Plus or some other weird name?
That's a really good question. Will Samsung just say, you know what, it's the 4, it's the next version? When the 3 Plus made sense because it was a mod to the 3. This is supposedly going to be an entirely new phone. But every time I move, whenever I have my new house number, there's at least 3 or 4 friends who are like, oh, good, you don't have a 4 or an 8 in there. So I mean, people
Are you serious?
For good or ill, this really does affect them. And if Samsung's going to sell this in China, which I know they were going to want to, or Korea, or all around Asia, that is a serious consideration for them. Do they rename it, or do they call it the Samsung Galaxy S Awesome or something like that?
Well, I have one of the big things I did this year was I launched a Chinese version of my podcast Skeptoid, and the list of things that we have to take into account to make sure that a show that's typically made for the American, Western European market is going to be appealing to people in China. That list grows surprisingly long all the time, and actually, things like episode numbers, I haven't even considered that. I better take a second look at it.
Someone in
Galaxy
chat,
S 2x2.
Someone in chat noted, well, what about the iPhone 4 that sold really well in Asia? So that's a good point.
That's a good point.
It's not actually keeping people away from buying a phone that has a number 4 or apparently the number 8 in it.
It could have sold better.
That's right.
So, I'm told that
at the time it was a record, though.
Oh, okay. Well, still.
Anyway, I'm excited about this phone when it comes out. I'm actually kind of glad that there's something other than iPhone rumors. The Galaxy line, I thought, they've done a great job at Samsung. I'm very curious about this phone. I can't wait for these 1080p displays. I know they're very available on certain phones, but
honestly, I think this phone's going to have even a little bit more of a push. It's not going to have a hard time selling at all, just because this series just knocks them dead completely. It's a very successful series. But I think it's going to do even further because of all the people still waiting for their Nexus 4. The Nexus 4 supply issues that have happened, they've strung along. People are holding out for it. This thing's going to be out before you know it. People are going to be like, you know what? Screw it. I don't want the 4 anymore. I don't want the Nexus 4 anymore. I'll just get the S4.
I misspoke when I said 8, when I implied 8 was unlucky. 8 is apparently lucky. And so you have an 8-core processor in here. Maybe they'll emphasize that. That's actually one of the coolest things about this thing.
Octo luck.
The Samsung Galaxy S
Octo.
All right, let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, Citrix and ShareFile. Let me tell you, every time I go through these stressful situations, like I formed an LLC at one point, and recently I just moved to LA, there's always these forms that you run into, and people are like, oh, I need to take a look at these forms, these huge stacks of forms. You need them reviewed. ShareFile has saved my bacon more than once. ShareFile by Citrix makes working with the other people easy. Keeps your important work files secure. They're under your control. You're not just throwing them up somewhere where you're like, oh, I think it's secure. I think maybe they got the file. Did they get the file yet? No, with ShareFile, you can email files of almost any size because you send a link. It's easy on the other end, even if they're not a ShareFile customer, to get the file. You know they'll be delivered quickly and securely. You can get notifications when those files are received and opened. I use that a lot. And you can transfer files to other people confidentially. You decide who has access. You can put password protection on there, plus post project-related files to a shared collaboration space. And ShareFile allows you to access your files from anywhere, your laptop, your tablet, your smartphone. Try ShareFile today. Sign up with our special offer right here at Tech News Today, a full 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone, and enter TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com and type in TNT. And we thank Citrix and ShareFile for their support of Tech News Today. So Yahoo's moving into the recruiting space in an interesting way. What's going on with this, Sarah?
Well, yeah, okay. So there was a tweet that was sent out by a former Yahoo employee who said, "Well, this is not what I expected to get in the mailbox." His name's Tom Coates. He has been away from Yahoo for quite a few years, and it was a picture of basically a welcome new employee handbook. Yahoo welcomes you with a little Sharpie added back. As in, Yahoo welcomes you back, former employee that actually isn't trying to get a job here. So it's a little bit of a, it's sort of when a company would try to recruit somebody and they make business cards up. Hopefully, that you'll be flattered enough to take them seriously. Apparently, according to Alexia Totsis over at TechCrunch, she says she's heard from quite a few former Yahoo employees who say, "Yeah, we've gotten those," and that at least one person decided to move back to the company because of it. Now, you might say, well, this is just sort of like, I don't know, recruiting stuff. But on the packet, on the inside, is a bunch of copy about how the company has changed so much, and now that Marissa Mayer is it's part of her regime, Yahoo wants to talk about big opportunities. But it also sounds like that Yahoo has reportedly had a really hard time with recruiting thus far. Obviously, Mayer hasn't been in charge for that long, but the traditional ways of reaching out to folks, phone calls, emails, that sort of thing, have not been going that well. According to sources, again, and these aren't people who are named, but assuming that they're familiar with the company, say Yahoo was offering insane salaries to employees that they know, also new employees, but employees that they know had been great in the past and would be good for Yahoo's future, and getting turned down. So to me, I guess I just want to ask the group, would I'll start with you, Ayaz. Would you be flattered by this, or does this just seem pathetic? Because I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it. Snail mail?
I think I'd be flattered.
Yeah.
Because, okay, look, they're actually sending me something instead of an email or something that doesn't cost any money. This is a little bit of an effort in some respects. But, I mean, I could see why it could be seen as pathetic. But, I mean, Yahoo at the top has Marissa Mayer now. So it's a little bit, I would imagine it should be easier to get high-level talent back to Yahoo. But they're still fighting a huge amount of, years of mismanagement.
Well, Mayer is still running on, I think, what most people think is a really good reputation. People think she's smart. There's stuff happening at Yahoo behind the scenes. I'm not exactly sure how their acquisition model is working, because that seems to be kind of slow. But she seems like such a personable person and very intense, but well liked. That makes a lot more sense to me. I know she can't make recruiting phone calls all day, but if there's high-level talent that the company really cares about, you could send them a pamphlet in the mail and say, like, welcome back to Yahoo, winky face. Or maybe Mayer could get a hold of them and tell them personally how much they should be contributing to what's going to be an amazing company in, the next 6 to 12 months.
I want to see more what's in this packet. I mean, I get those things all the time from places like Consumer Reports saying, hey, we miss you as a subscriber. Why don't you come back? They're never compelling to me. And you said that at least one person is actually, they worked on, they went back?
Yes, but that's one person out of, I don't know how many, but apparently a lot of people who go, oh, Yahoo, yeah. I didn't call you back because I didn't want to talk to you. Now I got to throw this stuff in the recycling bin.
Felt flattered by a piece of junk mail that was mass mailed to thousands of people.
I know, right? That's the way I'm looking at it too. It's like, this wasn't, well, maybe, I don't know, is it personalized in some way possibly, but it's obviously mass produced, at least on some level. I do agree that Marissa Mayer is doing the right thing and trying to reach out and say, hey, you know what? We're different. We've changed. I'm in charge now. And that could be compelling and make a difference.
Maybe on the Sharpie, instead of just saying back, it should be like back, Jerry or somebody's name in there. So at least seems a little bit more customized instead of being like, welcome back, generic person. It's like, how about somebody?
Well, it's possible that they all have, their names typed on the inside somewhere.
Well, if you handwrite it, it's even more, it's so much more.
They handwrote back in Sharpie. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Onion skin paper.
We're agreeing.
Yes, we are.
I'm unfamiliar with that, so I decided to attack you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
There's a weird feeling. I don't know where that came from. Let's talk about a man with an entirely different management style from Marissa Mayer, IS.
Sure. Let's talk about Steve Ballmer. There's a new book about Microsoft from a fellow named Joe Chim. I can't say this guy's name. Joe Chim Kempin. I think that's how you pronounce it. He wrote a book called Resolve and Fortitude, Microsoft's Secret Power Broker Breaks His Silence. And he worked at Microsoft from 1983 to 2002, oversaw the sales of Windows software to computer makers for part of that time. He says that Steve Ballmer purposefully ousted any executive that could take his CEO position. Apparently, he's very protective of that. He says he saw it happen with a fellow named Richard Belluzzo, who helped launch the Xbox and became COO of Microsoft. But Belluzzo left after 14 months. And then, of course, there's that famous list of people who have left while Ballmer was CEO. There's Kempin himself, Ray Ozzie, Stephen Elop, and Steven Sinofsky. Kempin says that Microsoft needs somebody who is 35 to 40 years old at the top. Sarah, what do you think? Do you think Microsoft should go young up top?
I don't know. I don't know. 35 to 40, I mean, it's because that's going to be hip and happening. I don't know. Some 35 to 40-year-olds would be bad leaders. I think the right leader has almost nothing to do with how old or young they are.
Brian, do you think that Steve Ballmer is the right leader for Microsoft at this point? Because they're just kind of they're going in a certain direction.
Well, I will say that I think Microsoft is more than just a tweak away regarding the age of its CEO. With Ballmer, I don't know what to say with Ballmer. I just can't get past that crazed look in his eyes. The man is obviously ravingly insane, just by his eyes alone. I really don't have anything more intelligent to say than that.
So he frightens you. That's good to know. Tom, what do you think? I mean, Ballmer's had some really talented people around him, and they all seem to be running away screaming. Should he be like welcoming these people instead of pushing them out?
Well, you know, you look at this list, and I think this illustrates Sarah's point. You look at somebody like Ray Ozzie, and you think, wow, what a loss. You know, Microsoft did suffer. You look at somebody like Steven Sinofsky, you're going to get different opinions depending on who you ask. Some people are very glad to see him go. Other people think he was a talented guy, and that was also a loss. And it's questionable whether this is all directly related to Steve Ballmer, but it would not surprise me if that's the way Ballmer acts, that he is a power-based protector. He's a type A personality. It's what makes him a good CEO. So you got to take the good with the bad if you're going to have that kind of guy in charge. Ballmer is really suffering constant attacks since he took over as CEO, because he took over at a time when Microsoft is stable and coasting, and they haven't done anything really crazy successul that's new in a while, and everybody's worried that Windows is going to be eroded by the rise of smartphones, etc. So I think if I, not that Steve Ballmer wants or needs my advice at all, but when I look at it, I think what Microsoft needs to do is come up with something innovative, and that has nothing to do with replacing Ballmer as CEO so much as fostering innovation. If this is true, and if there was a culture where people who might be talented get run out because they're a threat, that could be one break on innovation for Microsoft for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you've really got to surround yourself with people that can help you do your job. And I thought Sinofsky actually had a really good direction. It might have been a crazy one, but at least he had one. And the fact that he left right after the launch of Windows 8, it just seems a little strange. I wish that Ballmer could just either move aside and let's see where Microsoft's going to go. Because if all their successes are from other people, if it's Sinofsky with Windows 8 or Jay Allard for the Xbox and all these other things, if these guys are leaving, why is Ballmer still there? He's not in charge of the success anymore. So everybody else did it. So
yeah, it does start to seem as if people, you know, you get up to a certain level of executive, and it's like, well, you're not going to take Ballmer's spot because he's not going anywhere, and he's going to bark at you and scare you out, and so then you eventually leave.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's finish up with Cuba, of all things. Earlier this month, Cuba opened up its undersea cable to the internet, getting a lot of write-ups this week. It's called the Bolivarian Alternative for the Peoples of Our America /1. That's the English version. In Spanish, that makes it ALBA 1, A-L-B-A. It's a subterranean fiber optic link that is connecting Cuba and Venezuela. It was actually installed by Alcatel-Lucent back in 2007 and has been used for direct government communications between Cuba and Venezuela, while the citizens of Cuba have had to use satellite internet, which costs up to $6 an hour for communication there. However, route monitor Renesas now says they're noting inbound traffic routed to Empresa de Telecomunicaciones de Cuba, which is ETESCA. That's the state-owned telecommunications agency in Cuba. On the other hand, you've got Telefonica, who are identified as the source of a lot of this traffic. It's routed through Telefonica, then it's going into Cuba over this fiber optic link. Telefonica's like, we're not doing it. We don't have anything to do with it. We don't know what's going on here. Now, there's a political controversy over supporting Cuba, I suppose. So maybe Telefonica is just trying to deny any involvement in this. But it does seem that, I mean, Renesas says, okay, well, there's traffic going into Cuba. It's not going out. The outgoing traffic is going up to the satellite link, but at least they're getting a better connection. Who can take advantage of this? That remains to be seen. But it caught my eye because you see this sort of gradual pushing of the internet into places. We had Eric Schmidt visiting North Korea, trying to get North Korea more on board with open internet. And you did see North Korea recently open up their phone system so that people with foreign phones can actually use the phone system in North Korea. I'm not sure I'd want to in that case. But does the internet actually push countries to open up, or are these just like, well, you know, they're always going to add a little bit of new technology, but they're still maintaining the same control? Brian, just in your opinion, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's a huge development for Cuba. Having people exposed to the outside world and having people be able to interact with people in other countries, that is so much more effective in getting those countries to open up than, embargoes or something. And I don't want to start a whole political discussion here, but if you want to bring a country out of the third world and into today's century, this is how you do it. I think this is going to be a tremendous thing. It sounds like it's a tremendous start. I'm not sure what's up with this one-way thing, though. Does that mean that if you're on a web browser, your web request goes up through the satellite and the web page comes to you through the cable?
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the way Hughes satellite service used to work, where your connection would come down from the satellite, but then your outgoing request would go over the phone line. Sounds like.
Well, it's a step in the right direction. I'm very excited about it. I mentioned I've done a lot of research for the importance of foreign language audiences for my podcast, just as another example. I don't mean to keep repeating that, but China was obviously number one. It's the largest non-English speaking population. And then you've got Russia and Spanish. Spanish language is a huge, huge market. And, Cuba being the beautiful tropical paradise that it is, I think it's a very exciting development for them and for the outside world around them.
Sarah, how much credit do you think we can give the internet for just as a necessary enabler of progression to opening up societies like Cuba?
Well, I mean, this is obviously very interesting timing because Cuba is on the cusp of being a much more open country for a variety of reasons. I think that when you have a small number of people in charge of a larger number of people that are restricting something like internet access, then okay, well, if the internet exists for them, does it help influence them to want to allow this for everyone else? I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure it's a case-by-case basis type of a thing. But in general, yes, I think that the internet is, when you have been using it long enough, you realize that we're all connected. So there's a lot less of that cutoff mentality. And maybe that just starts to seep out as far as, actual governments go.
We see China struggling with this all the time, where they're trying to embrace the internet while not letting it change their society too fast. What do you think this is going to mean for societies that maybe have fewer resources at their disposal than China does?
Well, I think what happens is once the internet gets in anywhere, it's kind of like putting a drop of liquid into water, or something like. It just goes into this whole thing. You can never get it out. Once the internet's there, people are going to gravitate towards it. They do realize they're connected. There's a new medium for them to communicate in a way that just wasn't there in the beginning. So once that gets in, even if you have all the control like of China, they still have trouble because there are always ways around it. Because once you know that there's a way to do it and you can find this information somewhere, that gets spread around everybody. There's always a way around these things. So once the internet gets in, I mean, you can't get it out. I mean, it's just flat out, it just connects everybody and it makes ideas spread so much faster than you could ever do before.
You keep scrubbing and scrubbing. Yeah, exactly. You cannot stop the signal. All right, let's finish up with the randomizer. We actually had this one up for consideration for randomizer yesterday, but a lot of people on the subreddit still voting it up, and it's pretty cool. A Dutch architecture firm plans on using a D-shaped 3D printer to create a house. They estimate it'll take about 18 months to print out the house with sections of up to 6 by 9 meters at a time, using a mixture of sand and a binding agent. And architecture Jan-Jaap Ruzenaar of the Universe Architecture will collaborate with an Italian inventor, Enrico Dini, to build the house in the form of a Mobius strip. So it'll be 2 stories, but only 1 floor, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the image, it does seem as if it's a bit like a split level, almost like a figure 8 type of a thing. That's really.
Is it actually a Mobius strip, or is it just shaped like one? Do you have to walk on the ceiling if you walk all the way around?
They're gonna have to provide anti-gravity boots too, right?
Piece of cake.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy too that they're using a 3D printer. I mean, in a way, it's a little bit of a gimmick because they're just making a house out of sectional pieces of material, and that's not new. I mean, that has been done before, but using a 3D printer to make the sections is interesting to see it done. As far as I know, this is the first time anybody's attempted that. And of course, it's a cool looking house on top of it. Let's move on to the calendar.
Apple's earnings are tomorrow. It's kind of an interesting quarter, you know. Everyone's looking at what is supposed to be a blockbuster quarter, but again, you know, looking to the future. Anyway, we'll know more tomorrow. The Surface Pro sales are beginning on February 9th in the U.S. and Canada. Will be starting at $899. And BlackBerry World has been renamed to BlackBerry Live and scheduled for May 14th through the 16th, which is interesting because that is an overlap with Google I/O, which is May 15th through the 17th. Which one will you choose? We'll be covering both, of course.
They both need the developers, but I have a feeling one of them will win. You gonna get a Surface Pro, $899, IS?
I was cringing at that price. Not the Surface Pro. There are a number of other Intel-based Windows 8 machines I want, and the Surface Pro is not one of them.
All right, let's finish up with what's incoming.
Incoming message.
Got a voicemail. We were talking about how the Sony Tablet Z, getting a lot of press because it's so thin, is also supposedly waterproof and dust-proof. And we were like, well, dust, yeah, sure, nobody likes dust, but is dust-proof a big deal? We got a caller who says, I know some people that dust-proof is a big deal for.
Hey guys, this is Clayton from Oklahoma. I was just listening to yesterday's episode where you're talking about the dust-proof Sony tablet, and we're wondering why anybody would ever need a dust-proof tablet. I have a very specific application. I have a lot of friends here in Oklahoma that work in the oil and natural gas field, and many of them have been issued tablets for ordering new parts, for monitoring software, etc. And in that service, it's very dusty, it's very dirty, so a dust-proof tablet would be ideal in that environment. I just thought I could offer a unique perspective. Have a great day. Bye.
That makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I think we forget how quickly tablets have moved out into construction sites, work sites, oil fields, because we think of tablets as sort of a hipsterish item, but they're replacing, tough laptops.
Who thinks of a tablet as a hipsterish item?
Tom Merritt.
Right.
You do?
I do.
You do? Okay.
I make fun of all my friends who have them. I even have to make fun of myself.
Oh, good. I see. I think basically what we're saying is everybody's a hipster, not only hipsters use tablets.
Everybody's a hipster now?
All people who work in the oil and gas industry are hipsters. And you've heard it here first.
Skinny jeans
And
all over the
dusty
place.
ones at that.
And glasses with no lenses. Anyway, we got an email from Victor. He says, I was listening to episode 670 where you talked about the Lomography smartphone film scanner. And from my perspective, you buried the lead. Portability. Allow me to explain. My mom, who has all of my late father's slides going back to the 1940s, lives out of state. My wife's family all lives in India. I recently invested in a hand scanner to scan pictures while visiting my wife's family and will use it on family photographs when I visit my family as well. A portable negative/slide scanner would be a great way to capture old family photos without having to lug around a huge scanner. I will still have the negative slide scanner I purchased a few years ago to scan my old pictures, but this scanner may be the answer for scanning negatives when visiting family. Oh, thanks for that point, Victor.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, that is it for this episode of Tech News Today. Brian Dunning, thanks so much for joining us, man. It was great having you on.
Thank you for letting me be here.
We'd love to have you back anytime. Let folks know about Skeptoid and where they can find your work online.
Skeptoid.com. It's a podcast. I'm just about to hit my 6th-year anniversary. It's a show about all sorts of urban legends. It's the facts behind things that you've probably heard of, that maybe you've read about when you were a kid. It's a really interesting single-topic show, a new little urban legend, ghost story, something each week. And come to Skeptoid.com and check out. Add to the 175,000 weekly listeners.
Yeah, definitely head on over there, folks. And if you're on the audio podcast, skeptoid.com.
Yes, we're not English.
That's right. You can find our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. If you want to suggest a story for us to cover, we look at our own RSS feeds. We look at TechMeme. We look at Google News. We look at all kinds of resources. And this is one of the most important we look at, technewstoday.reddit.com, to find out what the folks on our subreddit say. Hey, we want you to talk about these stories. You can also find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv. And give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. You don't even have to be a hipster oil and gas industry professional. Anybody can leave us a voicemail. We will be back with Natalie Morris on the show tomorrow. See you then.